Ukrainian troops stepped up their courageous pace today and prepared a terrific surprise for the enemy in the early hours. Ukrainian forces destroyed the third and last bridge over the Sym River in the Kursk region. The collapse of this bridge left nearly 800 Russian paratroopers stranded. The Russian telegram channel Astra claimed that the bridge over the river in the village of Karish was targeted, cutting off the supply routes of troops in the Hlushkivsky district. Residents of the district were evacuated by boat. The destruction of the last bridge could leave Russian troops trapped south of the Sym River and create a siege of about 700 square kilometers. Ukrainian forces quickly demolished the largest bridge in Hlushkov and the next day another bridge in Zvanoye. Ukrainian Air Force Commander Mykola Oleshuk confirmed the attacks yesterday. Ukrainian military analyst Vasyl Pekno said that about 700 to 800 Russian paratroopers may be trapped inside the Ukrainian encirclement as a result of the triple attack. Pro-Kremlin military bloggers acknowledged that the destruction of the first bridge over the Sym River near the town of Glushkovo would hamper the delivery of supplies to Russian forces repelling the Ukrainian offensive, but said Moscow could still use pontoons and smaller bridges. Lieutenant General Mykola Oleshchuk, commander of the Ukrainian Air Force, released a video of an airstrike that cut the bridge in two on Friday. Less than 2 days later, Ukrainian troops attacked a second bridge in Russia, according to Oleshchuk and Russian Regional Governor Alexei Smirnov. As of yesterday morning, no official has revealed the exact location of the second bridge attack. However, Russian telegram channels claimed that the second bridge in the village of Zvanoye on the Sym River was hit. A representative of the Russian Investigative Committee added in a statement today, "As a result of targeted shelling of residential buildings and civilian infrastructure in the village of Karish with rocket and artillery weapons, the third bridge over the same river was damaged." Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said yesterday that the daring military intervention in Russia's Kursk region was aimed at creating a buffer zone to prevent Moscow from launching further attacks across the border. It is the first time Mr. Zelensky has openly stated the purpose of the operation, which began on August 6th. He had previously said that the operation was aimed at protecting communities in the neighboring Sumy region from constant shelling. Zelensky continued, "Our primary task in defensive operations at the moment is to destroy as much as possible the Russian combat potential and to carry out maximum counteroffensive actions. This includes the creation of a buffer zone on the territory of the aggressor." A spokesperson said, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's commitment to Ukraine was absolutely firm, despite Mr. Zelensky's suggestion that UK support had slowed recently. When asked about Mr. Zelensky's claims, the spokesperson said, "The Prime Minister remains absolutely resolute in his support for Ukraine and indeed in the latest situation, including in Kursk. The Prime Minister wants to fully express his admiration for the courage shown by Ukrainian soldiers, who once again proved their spirit and determination against Russian aggression and showed that they will do whatever it takes to defend their country. This is a reminder that Ukraine is consistently exceeding expectations and Russia continues to fail. But in terms of our support, I repeat, unwavering. That's why we have pledged $3 billion a year of support to Ukraine to do this for as long as the war lasts." Meanwhile, the Moscow oil refinery, MNPZ, owned by Gazprom Neft, was forced to suspend the operation of about half of its capacity after a Ukrainian drone attack on Sunday. The facility, which supplies 1 out of every 3 liters of gasoline sold in Moscow and is a major supplier of jet fuel to the capital's airports, suffered serious damage in an early morning drone raid on September 1st, according to officials. The attack reportedly caused a fire and damaged a pipeline with a capacity of 6 million tons per year at the Europlus combined oil refinery facility. As a result of the incident, the plant was forced to temporarily halt the operation of this facility. Experts estimate that it will take 5 to 6 days to repair the damaged equipment, and production is scheduled to resume by the end of this week. During the repairs, the Moscow refinery will reduce the production and sale of fuel, which could affect the supply of gasoline and other petroleum products in Moscow and its surroundings. Last year, the facility processed 11.6 million tons of oil, producing 2.6 million tons of gasoline, 3.3 million tons of diesel, and 0.9 million tons of jet fuel. On the other hand, the U.S. Department of Defense declined to comment on the details of the F-16 incident in Ukraine, stressing that the Ukrainian side is playing a leading role in the ongoing investigation. Pentagon spokesman General Patrick Ryder said that Ukraine, like any sovereign country where a similar incident has occurred, is playing a leading role in the investigation, adding that he would not comment further to the media on the latest incident involving a partner-donated F-16 fighter jet in Ukraine. As we know, the Ukrainian side lost the F-16 on August 26th while repelling a massive Russian missile and drone attack. The pilot of the aircraft, Oleksiy Mess, lost his life. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated that the F-16s showed high efficiency in air combat. 4 enemy cruise missiles were shot down by air-to-air weapons. In addition, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russia suffered 1,300 casualties in a single day, bringing Moscow's total losses to 617,000. Since the war began, the Ukrainian army claims to have neutralized 8,601 Po-9 Russian tanks, 16,786 Pl-26 IFVs, and 17,646 Pl-10 artillery systems. According to Brigadier General Oleksandr Pivnenko's July interview with Ukrinform, the advance in the east could be reversed if Vladimir Putin's forces are forced to establish defensive positions by September. Brigadier General Oleksandr Pivnenko continued, "I don't think they will be able to launch a serious offensive for at least a month or two, possibly longer in both directions, and instead they will have to be content with defense. We also need to organize and train our forces. While the bulk of Kiev's forces are moving towards the Russian city of Kursk, Russian forces continue to advance in the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine." Ukrainian military chief Oleksandr Syrsky said the country's strategy of occupying Russian territory facilitates Moscow's expansionist goals in the country. Obviously, the enemy is aware of this. That is why it continues to send its strongest forces to reinforce its positions in the Pokrovsk direction. In the Pokrovsk region, the enemy is actually strengthening its forces, despite attempts to withdraw from other regions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that there has been no progress near the city of Pokrovsk in the last 2 days, despite fears about the city. Zelensky continued, "Everything is going according to plan, and Operation Kursk is successfully completing its objective. We also believe that it can change the course of Operation Pokrovsk, as fewer Russian forces means less pressure. But as far as we can see, things are difficult there. As challenging as it is, the Pokrovsk sector has not made any progress in the last 2 days. On the other hand, Ukraine's Kursk offensive, which in 4 weeks has penetrated 10 to 20 miles deep into Russia, allows us to draw several conclusions. First, it shows that the Russian military, which before the war was one of the most formidable military forces in the world, can no longer respond quickly and properly. Second, the war with Ukraine is still deeply unpopular in Russia. Despite the first invasion of Russia since World War II, it has not provoked a patriotic reaction. Third, Putin feels no threat to his power and is under no pressure to change his current course. The success of Ukraine's Kursk intervention has not yet forced Putin to do anything different. By the end of July 2024, the Russian-Ukrainian war, now in its 3rd year, seemed to have come to a halt in the war of attrition in eastern Ukraine. At an enormous cost with thousands of casualties, the Russian army was advancing at a pace of 1 or 2 miles a week or slower. Advanced air defenses have not been able to fully protect civilians and energy infrastructure from missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian cities, but they are responding with much more force than before. Meanwhile, Ukrainian-made drones have hit oil and gas refineries deep inside Russia. Still, the media narrative was that Ukraine was slowly but surely losing the war. The Kursk offensive changed that. The immediate military lesson of the Kursk offensive is relatively simple. Ukrainian forces have been occupying part of Russia for nearly a month, and the Russian army cannot force it out. Worse, it has yet to stabilize any lines of defense. The advance of Ukrainian forces is slow and Russian territory is vast, so there is no threat to major cities or lines of communication, but it is still advancing. 3 years ago, who could have predicted that the Russian army would not be able to stabilize the front lines inside Russia for weeks? The Kursk offensive is a visual demonstration of the Ukrainian army's ability to conduct modern maneuver wars with combined armed forces. Another big surprise, at least from a pre-war perspective, was the complete absence of any significant reaction from the Russian population. The Ukrainian army controls more than 100 small towns and villages, and yet there are zero protests against the occupiers in these territories. No peaceful protest, no armed resistance. When Russian troops occupied Ukrainian towns in the first months of the war, there were always peaceful protests. Russian occupying troops are forced to brutally suppress both peaceful protests and underground resistance, torturing and executing civilians without trial. There is no reaction in Russian villages. The same situation is happening all over Russia. As children in the Soviet Union, we memorized the names of civilian resistance figures in times of foreign occupation. If there is a foreign invasion, we Russians volunteer for the army. We sacrifice everything for victory. In August 2024, there is a real invasion of Russian territory with thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and hundreds of tanks, and there is no reaction. Zero new volunteers, zero grassroots activism supporting those affected by the war. The Russian people have shown no enthusiasm for the war against Ukraine before, and the Kursk offensive by the Ukrainian army that brought war to Russian territory has not changed that at all. Not surprisingly, Putin feels no political pressure to change course. There is a popular metaphor about the First World War. Countries sleepwalked into a catastrophe that caused millions of deaths and wiped entire countries off the map. Using this metaphor, the Putin regime sleepwalked into a disastrous war against Ukraine. Now, in the third year of the war, Russia is still sleepwalking. The Kursk offensive, a demonstration of Ukraine's strength and a harbinger of Putin's war coming home, did not wake him up. What followed was an exciting development. The Ukrainian military began deploying drones equipped with thermite payloads, turning its deadly drone fleet into effective flamethrower weapons. Footage shared by Ukraine's 108th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade shows the drones drop streams of molten thermite over enemy positions, resulting in huge columns of smoke rising from the impact zones. The widely circulated video highlights the destructive capability of these modified drones as thermite ignites on contact, creating an inferno capable of destroying Russian positions. Thermite is still considered less lethal than white phosphorus or napalm. Ukrainian Telegram channels reported that the footage of the clashes was filmed in the eastern Donetsk region, where Russian forces are advancing towards the city of Pokrovsk, a key logistics hub for Ukrainian forces. Although the exact model of the drone is unclear, war bloggers suggest that the footage captured from the drone's vantage point shows it to be one of the largest FPVs. Thermite, a mixture of metal dust and metal oxide, can reach temperatures high enough to melt steel when ignited. In eastern Ukraine, a Ukrainian drone dropped molten thermite into a Russian-held grove of trees, setting it ablaze, an analyst said, sharing footage shared by several Ukrainian Telegram accounts. The tactic is seen as a significant advance in the use of drones in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, enabling Kiev to hit Russian positions, especially in densely forested areas in the east, where enemy forces often take cover. Some experts have noted that thermite bombs have become a weapon of choice among Ukrainian drone operators, especially for destroying abandoned Russian vehicles. Thermite has limitations as an incendiary weapon due to its small area of effect. Unlike other incendiaries that burn instantly, a thermite reaction heats a small area to a high temperature over a longer period of time. As the flamethrower drone flies, it emits molten iron from the thermite reaction, creating a shower of white-hot droplets. While soldiers in shelters or wearing helmets and body armor are generally safe if they don't look up, the real risk comes from the fire. Termites ignite combustible materials, especially in dry conditions, causing small fires to grow into larger ones. These fires and the resulting smoke can cause troops to abandon their positions. The intense heat of the substance and the difficulty of extinguishing it raise concerns about potential civilian casualties. In Ukraine, large open areas are often divided by narrow tree lines, which serve as important defensive positions. These tree lines provide important cover in a conflict that is constantly monitored by drones, and the Russian military reinforces its forward defenses along these natural barriers. While thermite-spewing drones have proven effective in military applications, incendiary weapons pose serious risks when deployed in civilian-populated areas. Meanwhile, Ukraine is in the process of finalizing agreements with its partners on lifting the ban on long-range strikes on military targets inside Russia using Western weapons. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba described the situation as a matter of the last mile and said that work was being done on this issue. According to the official, Ukraine's ability to strike military targets deep inside Russian territory and Russia's reduced ability to launch airstrikes on Ukraine depend on countries close and friendly to Ukraine, the United States, Britain, France, and Germany. He added that Ukraine's partners should lift all restrictions on the use of Ukrainian weapons in attacks on military targets in Russia and provide Ukraine with the necessary missiles. As officials reported earlier during the interview, the head of Ukrainian diplomacy called on partners to accelerate the supply of air defense systems and make new commitments. The only way to intercept Russian ballistic missiles are the Patriot, SAM-PT systems, because only they are capable of intercepting ballistic missiles. Russia hit a training facility and a hospital in Poltava with 2 ballistic missiles. 51 people were confirmed dead and 271 injured. Meanwhile, Prikapatia police detained a suspect who set fire to a car belonging to a local volunteer. The police released the following statement. A man seeking easy money set fire to a volunteer's car. The charges include obstructing legitimate operations of the armed forces of Ukraine and other military formations, intentionally damaging or destroying property through arson. In early August, the attacker found an advertisement on Telegram offering part-time work that involved setting soldiers' vehicles on fire for $1,000. The police warned citizens not to succumb to various provocations, adding, "Today, the enemy is working to destabilize our country and is looking for people to hire to carry out their criminal purposes." This year, the police and SBU detained more than 70 arsonists targeting vehicles. There was a very important development in the following hours. The Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada received a letter of resignation from Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba. Rada chairman Ruslan Stefanchuk wrote under Kuleba's letter that the bill will be discussed at one of its upcoming meetings. Following Kuleb, the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada also received resignation letters from Minister of Strategic Industry Alexander Kamyshin, Minister of Justice Denis Malyuska, Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources Ruslan Strelets, and Head of the State Property Fund Vitaly Koval. Stefanchuk stated the following. The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine received resignation letters from the following persons. Minister of Strategic Industries of Ukraine, Kamyshin OM, Minister of Justice of Ukraine, Malyuska DL, Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine, Strelets RO. In addition, a letter of resignation was received from the chairman of the State Property Fund of Ukraine, Koval VS. He noted that all resignation letters will be considered at the upcoming plenary sessions. MP Yaroslav Jelezniak wrote on his Telegram channel that Ukrenergo's supervisory board dismissed the chairman of the board of directors, Volodymyr Kudrytsky. From September 4th, Oleksiy Brecht, a member of the management board responsible for the operation, restoration, and development of high-voltage infrastructure, will serve as Ukrenergo's chairman. Following this, President Volodymyr Zelensky announced personnel changes in the Cabinet of Ministers and the presidential office, explaining this by the need to strengthen some areas of government. The fall will be extremely important for Ukraine, and our state institutions must be set up so that Ukraine achieves all the results we need. To do this, we need to strengthen some areas in the government, and we have prepared personnel decisions. There will be changes in the office as well. I count on a slightly different weighting for certain areas of our foreign and domestic policy. First, he said, there is a need for more interaction between the central government and communities, especially now, in preparation for the winter season. Secondly, Ukraine has achieved significant results in defense production, and this should be strengthened at all levels, especially to facilitate attracting co-investment in our strategic industries. Thirdly, he is of the view that cooperation with NATO needs to be significantly strengthened, which requires special interaction. Fourth, the European Union, the actual membership negotiations, the preparation of the relevant chapters of the future membership treaty. This is also a very clear legal and political work. There will be personal responsibility for it. And fifth, we need to combine everything that Ukraine has achieved in its relations with its partners with the tasks that our state faces in countering Russian propaganda and protecting Ukrainian cultural heritage. Zelensky emphasized that the time has come to give new strength to Ukraine's government institutions. Thank you for tuning in.